All opinions expressed on any program are those of the producer and are persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of DCTV. All producers and guests appearing on programs provide information and opinions based on information they consider to be reliable. DCTV does not affirm the completeness and accuracy. All DCTV members agree to adhere to DCTV's statement of compliance and are participants in a community medium forum where they're exercising their freedom of speech.
Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis. Welcome to the series on the network of global corporate control. Thanks to DCTV, to Carmen Stanley, Project Director, Maurice Jackson, Studio Director, and I think Carmen's in the studio now too, and Cruchet Starnes, Audio and Teleprompter. Today's segment is live and is called Getting Through. Last week's segment was called Holding On. We're holding on to each other, and we're holding on to ourselves, and what's more, we are holding on to the world's wealth. For our regulars, in a while, I'm going to update you in comments without using the teleprompter. You'll find in the notes that I put at the end of the teleprompter why this segment is called Getting Through. I upload videos of the DCTV segments in the archives on YouTube. You'll probably need headphones to hear the videos because YouTube has tried to censor me by lowering the volume in its video player. That's why I published the teleprompter on Twitter and Facebook. You can find the link to the teleprompter on YouTube by clicking on the Show More button. I've been answering your questions in the comments section of the YouTube archives ever since this series began 3.5 years ago. Now I'm going to give you some more background. This series is about the network of global corporate control. The network of global corporate control is a slow learner. They're finally learning that people notice all their efforts to censor me. For instance, when YouTube lowers the volume to 50% and hides all of my replies to your comments behind buttons and erases some of my responses to your questions, or when Twitter deletes my tweets, or when the network of global corporate control tries to kill me. One question I sometimes get is why I'm not dead. The banking cartel is not all-powerful, but it did try several times to do me in. The short explanation is that I'm being protected, and it's a lot easier to keep one stubborn lady alive than to fight World War III. If anybody thinks this is an exaggeration, all you have to do is to look at what happened to me when I went to Canada in 2016 after somebody named George or Julius tried to steal the world's wealth. I tweeted his voicemail message last week, and there's a roll-in. I'm assuming you can hear this voicemail message now.
Tuesday, 1:25 p.m. Karen, it was great pleasure speaking with you. Great pleasure speaking with you yesterday. Give me a call. We should be there for today. I read the contract. I have some questions to ask you. We should be there. Bye.
Somebody named Cheryl took me to task, and she asked me why I was talking about medical insurance claims, and I said because my medical problems resulted from when the banking cartel tried to kill me. And I'm going to read you the email that I sent to Julius. You heard his voicemail message, and I called him George then. Dear George, I just listened to your message again, and I believe you were referring to the monetary agreement as the contract, and we're not proposing a contract. I apologize for the confusion. As Overseer Mandate Trustee, I need to let people know of a contact that wants me to have the Euroclear account numbers. And on the 27th of July in 2016, I also wrote George. I said, I received your phone call late last night after I returned from my live broadcast on DCTV. I'm not sure which of the numbers in my cell phone are yours, as my landline doesn't keep a record of the phone numbers from the calls I receive. Your voicemail message was difficult to hear, but I thought I understood that you were asking for a contract. I have no legal authority to sign a contract. I'm advisor to the 188 Ministers of Finance and Development who would have to authorize the contract. This is a chicken and egg proposition, as I'm sure you can appreciate. And then I signed it as Acting General Counsel of the World Bank and Overseer Mandate Trustee of the Global Debt Facility. And I also sent another email to George. Per our conversation, Dear George, as we discussed, you're going to send me the Euroclear account numbers. Here is the monetary agreement. How did the banking cartel try to kill me? After I was zapped with scalar electromagnetic weapons, I saw everything upside down at first. I returned home from Canada in a wheelchair. The doctors at Johns Hopkins who treated me forgot to tell me that I had an irregular heartbeat. I found this out later. Now Johns Hopkins is refusing to send me the rest of my medical records. In the meantime, after a cardioversion where they shocked my heartbeat is back to normal. And then in the run-up to today's segment, 2 days ago, I retweeted, what happened when the bankrupt U.S. federal government tried to kick me off the internet on the 21st of October, 2014. And then I tweeted that in 2018. Dear people, in my DC TV segment on November 6th, I announced the defeat of the black nobility. We've been working together for some time, actually. Who is we? The Coalition for the Rule of Law that was predicted by the United States National War College. This coalition includes the world's military powers who are keeping peace while the people of the world end the corruption that's in the world's money. To convince you that this is really so, I'm showing you a tweet from 2014 telling you how the U.S. federal government, which is corrupt and actually part of the network of global corporate control, tried to kick me off the internet, and how I remain active on the internet. I've learned a couple of things in the last 4 years. Actually, now it's 6. Because we're all working together, our money and markets are not very likely to crash. When I say that we're all working together, this means that I have to be transparent and accountable to everybody. And then I signed it again as Acting General Counsel of the World Bank and Overseer Mandate Trustee of the Global Debt Facility. For our newbies, I'm going to begin with a question that I asked in my social media a couple of days ago. Are there many dupes today as there were last year? What do you think? Are you one of the dupes too? Are you sensitive to scalar weaponry mind control? How would you know? We're now in a global currency reset to end the corruption in the money system and to clarify reality to the duped. Without the United States Constitution of 1789 in force, Trump's inauguration is a fraud. What you need to know first. Today, we're going to rerun the short clip in the Taco Bell commercial about mind control. We showed it to you on Christmas. It's important that you see this clip because it's an admission that there is mind control. The commercial shows you a control room for a supercomputer and a group that are observing two people who manage to escape from a black and white world to a world in Technicolor. This world is like the Emerald City in The Wizard of Oz. August 4th, 2015. Oh, are we showing the clip now? Actually, I think we ought to do that. We will win. We're all working together, and victory is already assured. Let me give you some background. 7 days before John F. Kennedy's assassination, he said, "I must confess from my position in this high and noble office that the anarchists were correct all along. The government is illegitimate, and I intend to tell the American people about this." And here's an extract from a speech by President Kennedy to the press corps on the 27th of April, 1961. "For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence in infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day." I'm sorry, it appears that this is a clip from the video and not showing the Taco Bell commercial and the mind control. We'll have to show it to you in the next week's video. I'm sorry about that confusion. We're all working under a lot of time pressure. And the first time that I showed you that clip, that the banking cartel is conceding its defeat in the Taco Bell commercial about electromagnetic, extremely low-frequency mind control technology, the banking cartel is trying to hide the patents for mind control. The link to a list of these patents is no longer working. In the teleprompter, I gave you another link that has a copy of what was removed from the internet. YouTube is trying to hide a link to this video on mind control. And there's another good article on mind control that you can see the link to in the teleprompter. It's called "The Mind Has No Firewall." The video that I shot 2 years ago, just before the banking cartel and the black nobility that directs the banking cartel tried to kill me, was called "Who Done It?" It was a sequel to the July 19th, 2016 segment, "Stop the Swiss Nazis." The banking cartel hacked into DCTV and delayed the broadcast of this segment, but on the 19th of July, 2016, DCTV overrode the interference 4 minutes before the pre-recorded segment finally aired. What about those of you who are hypnotized by mind control? A critical mass of humanity, which includes the world's military forces, are at work. As John F. Kennedy said, "A rising tide raises all boats." Last week, I told a Twitter account named SciG that they were controlled opposition, and a firestorm broke out. In order to keep the thread from overtaking my Twitter account, I had to block people that kept on including me. This was an attempt to interfere with communication on the global currency reset. And you can see in the teleprompter where that Twitter account is. And when I was replying to C, I said, "I think whoever you are and the 49 others on this conversation are gumming up the works. Take yourselves and your good intentions locally. I am clearing you from the world stage by blocking you." Next week, our segment will be devoted to the CIA. A Marine Expeditionary Unit landed on the CIA's branch office in Langley, Virginia on the 18th of November 2017. There's no doubt that the corrupt CIA is harpooned. And now I'm going to speak to you extemporaneously. And one of the reasons that I do this is because people were saying that even though I try to pack a lot of information into what I've put in the teleprompter, that was actually counterproductive. I was boring people, and they really didn't get it. And the fact is, when I see firsthand how people are being influenced by mind control, I realize that I'm not really very effective. And so that's what I'm trying to do in this segment. I'm trying to get us back to where we're all in communication. And one of the guidance that I got was when I went to a funeral of somebody who died recently. They were not a close friend, but they were a very close friend of some close friends of mine. That's Ginny. And what I learned at that memorial service was that it really counts, our relationships with each other. That's very, very important. And that's actually what it is that's going to allow us to overcome this mind control. Because the people that were inventing the mind control don't really know us very well. They do know that they can hack into our thoughts, and they could also influence our emotions. And if you read some of the information that I've sent you, and if you review the patents, you'll see how they're doing this. They're looking at our EKGs, the signals that we have in our brains, and they're replicating them. But the point is, if you know that this technology exists, then you can try to figure out which of your emotions, because they feel just like the real thing. But if you have a mind, you can think critically, which is to say that if you're having a very strong positive emotion to somebody who you normally wouldn't give a second thought to, then you realize this is probably mind control technology. And so I've been living with mind control technology for a very long time, and people were telling me about it to watch out for it. When I went to Japan in 2014, I met with some targeted individuals, and that's when I realized that I was also a targeted individual. And when you start working with other people, and that's what I mean when I talk about relationships really matter. When you work with other people, they can get through to you in a way that gives you back your own private thoughts. Because one of the things about this technology is they also are able, it's a two-way communication. When they see the brain waves that you have, they can actually read your thoughts. It's pretty scary stuff. And they thought that once they had that technology, we were just going to be susceptible, and they could just do with us whatever they wanted to. But they're actually, they're wrong. I'm sitting here talking to you extemporaneously. That means that their mind control isn't working. And that was also one of the reasons that I didn't want to talk extemporaneously, because I thought there was a chance that I might not be able to override something in an extemporaneous speech in front of people that I'm trying to convince. But I realized that no, I can take that risk, because I've gotten strong enough that I can just override this technology. And one of the ways I exercise my mind is through music, but by far the most important way is through human relationships. People that understood about this technology took me into hand, and they told me about what it was and what to watch out for, and I've been learning from them. And that's the whole point about what's been going on. If you think about it, it's really quite stunning. For 3.5 years, we've been having a conversation. And when you go back, you can see how we have all been working in sequence. For example, you can go back and see what we were talking about last week and the week before. You can see all of the segments in the YouTube archives. They go back for 3.5 years. And you can see how we're going. And when you look at the comments in YouTube, you can also see that there are people that are really quite far along. And we're all working together in tandem. And the military powers, they absolutely, they're all working together. I don't know exactly how their network works, but I can tell you they are in direct contact with me. They do this by flying overhead, and it's really extraordinary. On the way to DCTV, there was a helicopter just right in the middle of the road that I was taking. Not down, it was overhead. But sometimes they really don't fly that high. And every day, hardly a day goes by without some aircraft in very close range, flying very low, visibly, in my neighborhood. Or if I'm driving somewhere, they'll be on the road. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to talk to you about was how they tried to kick me off the internet, and there was a direct intervention. You can see that in the information that I put at the end of the teleprompters. What I try to do is I try to find a way of keeping the people who are really pretty advanced in where we are updated without speaking over and being really meaningless to people who haven't spent some time trying to figure out and sort out what's going on. But you absolutely do have to get into a group for your own protection once you realize that this technology is there. You don't want to be exposed to it without defense. And the best defense, as I have said, is if you are regularly in touch with other people who know you very well. They can point out to you when you're acting out of character. And they will. And you can all do this for each other. You need to do this, especially if you've been watching this series, because that way people know that there's a very good chance that some of this got through to you. And so if you get 2 or 3 friends and you talk through this, and you do a little bit of the research that I'm showing you, you'll see, yes, this is very real. And the stunning thing, and the reason that I'm so optimistic, is because when you realize what humanity is, and I've mentioned this before, we're all interconnected. When we think, the place that we process our thoughts is in one place. It's called the collective unconscious. We share that. So if we're all interconnected in this very fundamental way, once some of us get through, a critical mass gets through in some area, that means that this becomes a reality. Now, I was talking about what happened to me when I was in Canada in 2016. What I believe happened was that, I was probably, what happened to me with the weaponry would have killed me, except that somehow I ended up in a world where we're all together and we're all able to clean things up. Reality manifested because there was a critical mass of people that understood that we had a corrupt money system. This is my hypothesis. I don't have actual proof. But when you look through what the 100 monkey effect is, it makes perfect sense that this is exactly what happened. And I'm sitting in a place where all of us are actually sitting, but some of us realize where we are, and others of us, I call you dupes. And what you need to do, we're not going anywhere. We're all sitting in our world, which is in the process of getting cleaned up peacefully, because all of the world's militaries understand where we are, because there is a critical mass of people that understand that, yes, the tables have turned and we're cleaning up our corrupt world. which is so unbelievably corrupt that it's very hard to accept it. You have to really almost take it on faith and then experiment and see what is what. I couldn't believe that all of the legal profession were corrupt. You'll see in many years went by with me trying to reach out to my other colleagues in the legal profession. But one of the things that I mentioned in next week's segment is I talk about a colleague in the legal department at the World Bank who got back in touch with me. This colleague is German, and the Germans are absolutely essential in the turnaround. They play a very critical role if you look at the power transition model, which I've been showing you. And I've been showing this to you a lot because it's so accurate, and it tells us that there is this coalition. It tells us that, yes, this what I'm saying about all of the military powers of the world being in a coalition. Don't forget, this technology comes from the Department of Defense. And when I got through to them and I told them that I was working with this actual model, it was let me spend some time and tell you how that worked. First, I spoke to Chuck Hagel about this model before he became Secretary of Defense. And then once he was Secretary of Defense, then I said, you know what the model is, you know what it means, and you've got traitors in the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and you have to, they've committed treason. You have to do what you do to traitors. And that's what I believe Chuck Hagel was preparing to do when he got dismissed. So there are other people in the Department of Defense that know very well what the situation is, and they know how accurate this model is, and that's what they're doing. They're staying put. They're not trying to move too quickly because that would upset the apple cart, and they really don't have to because all of the world's wealth is put aside in a trust at the World Bank. And I've been telling you before what it is that you have to look for to see how we're going. And one of the things you have to look for, one of the indicators of our progress, is what is happening to the World Bank and my admission back to the World Bank. And this business about the president of the World Bank resigning and a new president being selected. Well, this is just a distraction because the president does not run the World Bank. It's the Board of Governors that run the World Bank. And I speak for the Board of Governors. And the reason that I'm allowed to speak for the Board of Governors is because they know that I'm not going to get out ahead of them. I'm not going to get out ahead of the people either. And we had a discussion about this because there are instances when people think, yes, I should get out ahead. For instance, when we know that all the banks have stolen all the people's property and nobody has title to anything. And we've been talking about how we could break through this logjam. We're getting through. Patriots from all the nations of the world are reaching out to the coalition to end the corruption. A German colleague of mine in the World Bank's legal department just contacted me to respond to an email I sent in 2013. As you know from the National War College's power transition model, Germany is a very important player. Please stay tuned as we watch the dominoes keep on falling on the corrupt network of global corporate control. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudis.